Guys, here we are. Oh my gosh, our second interview in Tel Aviv, Global Wellness Summit Tel Aviv 2022 is with kind of a rock star in the wellness world, Dan Buettner, the Blue Zones fame. Dan, welcome.
A delight to be here.
Okay, I got to brag about you for a minute. You're not just a tall, good-looking wellness guy, but you are an explorer, a National Geographic Fellow, an award-winning journalist and producer, and a New York Times best-selling author. But you discovered the 5 places in the world where people live the longest. So let's start, Dan, by saying to the Blue Zone virgins out there that might have been living in a cave, what is a Blue Zone and where are they?
This was just 2 definitions. One, it's a geographic designation. So there are areas where people live statistically longest. Longest lived women are in Okinawa, Japan. Longest lived men in the highlands of Sardinia. On the island of Ikaria, you have a place where people suffer about 1/10 the rate of dementia that we do in the otherwise developed world. In the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica, lowest rate of middle-age mortality. And among the Seventh-day Adventists in the United States, a population that lives about 10 years longer than their neighbors in California. And I've sort of taken the term Blue Zone and expanded it to be a bigger concept of an approach to living longer that doesn't focus on behavior, but rather focuses on the environment.
Yeah. Well, there's so much on your website. I can't wait to talk about community, but let's take our listeners through the, history of your books. You have a lot. You're a best-selling author. Can we walk through them? Because today we're going to talk about the Blue Zone American Kitchen, your newest one to come out soon. When does it come out?
Comes out December 6th.
Oh, cool. Christmas stocking situation. So tell us about all your books.
So the first book, The Blue Zones, was 9 Lessons for Living Longer from the People Who Live the Longest, was an attempt. A lot of scientists look for the answers to longevity in a test tube or a petri dish. And I had the idea of identifying these areas where people have achieved the outcomes we want, which is to live a long time, largely without chronic disease. And then had a team of advisors, thanks to National Geographic, that helped us sort of methodically go to each of these places and distill out the correlates to longevity or the common denominators.
Right.
That was the first book. The second book, Blue Zone Solution, sought to, once you know what the longest lived people do, how do you put them to work in your life for long enough so you don't develop disease and live a long time? I wrote then The Blue Zones of Happiness, which took a data-based approach to happiness. So I worked with Gallup, and through their world poll, I was able to get data representing 95% of the human population, and then correlated what people do with how happy they are. And in a more sort of science, and it turns out most of what we think drives happiness is misguided or just plain wrong. And then lately I've been writing these food books, the Blue Zone Kitchen and the Blue Zone American Kitchen, which are mostly the result of a meta-analysis. So if you want to know what a centenarian ate to live to be 100, you look at what they've eaten most of their lives. And you've discovered that by looking at dietary surveys done over the past century in all Blue Zones. So instead of taking the guesswork out, we actually looked at vast amounts of data, and we know exactly now what the longest lived people eat. And the delivery vehicle I found is you give people a bunch of recipes. So I went in the Blue Zones and gathered recipes, and then coupled it with this the results of a meta-analysis. And then because it's National Geographic, we have the most gorgeous photography on earth.
Oh my God. I was looking at some of the recipes. Just say some. Do you have any in your head? Because we have a lot of women listening. I'll just be real honest right now, Dan. We normally record on Zoom, and my assistant is on, and the tech guy, and me and the guest. This room is full of beautiful women. Why? Well, not just because of you, because they want to live forever. So they're listening, and they're going to cook. So give us a couple recipes.
Well, I'll give you the easiest one. So in Okinawa, the most prominent feature of their diet for the past 100 years has been purple sweet potatoes.
Purple sweet potatoes.
Yes, so 70% of their dietary intake till 1980 came from sweet potatoes alone. Very simple recipe. You take boiled purple sweet potatoes and you mash it with coconut milk, and it is crack-like delicious. It's maybe an indulgence you might not want to eat every day because of the fat in coconut milk, but it's still very healthy. Yeah, my other favorite, I found the longest lived family in the history of the world. the Melise family, 9 siblings, collective age 841 years.
Oh my gosh.
Every day of their life, they had the exact same lunch, which was a minestrone, which had 3 types of beans, garlic, tomato, fennel. Fennel, and not just the bulbs, the fronds as well, which that's where most of the antioxidants are in the fronds. And finished with a beautiful extra virgin olive oil. But that is rich and chunky and delicious. I eat it every day for breakfast, and I also offer the recipe for that.
Oh my gosh. Okay, guys, here's some of the ones I went to the website. Toasted fregula with asparagus. Don't know what that is. Chickpea falafel
like
patties.
couscous.
Oh, it's couscous. Cream of pumpkin soup. Sweet potato black bean burger. Gumbo. Bacon shrooms with creamy butter bean hummus. I'm sorry, there's a lot here. So I'll be busy, and I'll listen to podcasts while I cook.
I love that. So we get so used to frying up a piece of meat or going and ripping the package off of something and eating it. But really about 60% of the years of life expectancy we lose is because of the food we eat.
Ugh.
Everybody listening right now, if you're an average American or average person living in the developed world, you're probably losing about 14 years of life expectancy. And most of that is from eating the meaty, cheesy, over-processed food that, we have no choice because that's all that's around us. The secret is looking at these sort of genius plant-based recipes that people in the blue zones eat and just simply learning how to make them in our homes. And guess what? Number one, they're cheap. They're peasant foods. And number two, with a pressure cooker or an Instapot, you can cook 80% of them and assemble these meals in less than a half hour.
Yeah. And, you showed in your presentation today that kind of brought down the House that, there were bills in the House and the Senate that supported grain farmers, but there's an explosion of grain, which translates to processed food, and it's cheaper. So people are like, here, just eat at McDonald's. Here, buy these Doritos. What are some substitutions they can do? What is one thing someone could add to their diet?
Beans. Yeah. She mouthed it. If you didn't see that, but guess what? I knew that answer. So I think people ask me all the time, what is the most powerful longevity food in the world? And I could point to fermented tofu, super good for you, or bitter melon, which they eat in Okinawa, which lowers blood sugar. But actually, the most important ingredient in any longevity diet is taste. Because if it's not something you're going to eat for years or decades, don't even bother with it.
Right.
So the main secret people in blue zones possess is they know how to take beans, which are cheap and ubiquitous, and make them taste delicious. So people want to eat them every day. And if you're eating a cup of beans a day, you're not only getting about half of all the fiber you need for a day, but it's probably adding about 4 years to your life expectancy over eating protein from less healthy sources.
Unbelievable. You talked about the women in Okinawa that ate root vegetables, purple sweet potatoes. They're typhoon proof because you bury them underground to grow them, right? But they grow underground. Right.
So typhoon can come and rip all the terrestrial plants and they're still
down there.
Yes.
We had a nanny that helped with our boy, and she was from El Salvador. And one of my favorite dishes she made, it's simple. These things are simple, was cauliflower steamed, dipped in egg batter, whipped real light.
Oh, wow.
And then fried, but very lightly in olive oil. And you put fresh tomato sauce on it over rice. And you cry. You put hot pepper flakes. We begged her to do it every week. And, simple things, right?
That's right.
Isn't that what you find? Yeah.
Simple things. And, it's mostly whole plant-based food. But to your point, to make them palatable, to make them delicious so people actually want to eat them, it's usually a little bit of fat, a little bit of oil, which I know is maligned, but if it gets you to eat these vegetables, and also spices and herbs. So usually you can make the other great little trick. We learned this in Okinawa with vegetables, be it spinach or green beans, is to add a teaspoon of miso.
Ooh.
Because that adds an umami note to it. That sort of richness that it just makes it more complex, and you don't feel like you're a cow munching a garden.
Well, our screen went out. For those on YouTube, we're going to put it back. The blue zones are up there, so you can stare and see where you should move. I might become a Seventh-day Adventist because I don't live far from Loma Linda. Is that where it is, Loma Linda?
Loma Linda, California. Yeah.
That's near a hot springs too. So you couple living in that kind of environment with
Yeah.
soaking in hot springs, you're pretty good. Now, I want to know what stands out to you. We were able to visit. The last time we saw you speak was at GWS Italy, which was at the Techno Gym Village. They called it the Wellness Valley, but we went afterwards to Puglia, to Borgo Ignazia. And I felt like I would live forever
Oh,
if
yeah,
I
yeah,
stayed
yeah.
there. Is that a place you're working with for Blue Zones?
Yes, they did that. So, I'm kind of a stickler to this, that a lot of different hospitality experiences, products came to me and asked, well, we want to do a Blue Zone. But Borgo Ignacio, they actually agreed to allow us to take over for a week of programming, and we make them immerse that. So they learn how to cook. They learn this idea of a moai, that unless you reshape your social environment and add people who eat healthy to your immediate social circle, it's probably not going to last. How to set up your home. So we modeled what Blue Zone living was like during a vacation experience. And they did that all morning. Then in the afternoon, they could do whatever they want. But we made sure that all their meals were whole food, plant-based. I was kind of a stickler on that. So people's taste buds could sort of settle down for being napalmed by oil and, fried meat and so forth. And they could start to pick up the subtle deliciousness of eating whole food, plant-based.
Well, I think food is so crucial, but give us some of the other 9 key points of what it takes. One of the things that struck me the most, well, there's a couple, is friends. I mean, I read an article where you said having a friend at work could even make you more productive and satisfied at work.
Well, just to put a finer point on that. So Gallup interviewed 2 million employees. I work a lot with Gallup because they measure our Blue Zone cities. And so they give me access to the data. But you interviewed 2 million Americans, and they found that the biggest determinant of whether or not you liked your job, and therefore in many cases were productive, wasn't how much you got paid, wasn't how great your manager was, but whether or not you had a best friend at work. So these Blue Zone workplaces, we certify workplaces. One of the things we make sure they're doing is that management makes an effort to create non-commercial connections between employees. So with sponsored lunches, with happy hours, with organizing what we call moais, so they walk together. And so I'm a big believer that if you want a solution to live a longer, better life, you have to think in terms of years or decades. Friends tend to be long-term adventures. Friends have measurable influence on your behavior. We know, for example, if your 3 best friends are obese, there's a 150% better chance you'll be overweight. Smoking is contagious. Alcohol abuse is contagious. Unhappiness is contagious. So as trite as it sounds, about the most powerful thing you can do to change your health habits is to curate your immediate social circle.
Oh my God.
Way better than a diet or an exercise program. People don't think of these terms because there's no way to make money at it. But if you look at the statistics over time, adding friends into your circle whose idea of recreation is pickleball or walking, who care about you on a bad day. And by the way, it's not a bad idea for us all to have a vegetarian or vegan in our immediate social circle, because they're going to teach us where you can get delicious plant-based food and how to make it. And you better darn well know how to make it taste delicious from when you invite them over to your house.
Yeah. You also said the importance of, one thing that just really got me was to say grace before a meal, just to stop and be grateful for what you're about to eat. Why is that?
Well, this is, first of all, I observed in all Blue Zones that stopping and saying grace, but it takes about 20 minutes for a full signal in our belly to travel to our brain. And if you're eating in a hurry, you're much more likely to overeat before you even know it. Stopping to say grace slows everything down, puts punctuation between the monkey brain, the stress and worry, the hurry, and says, okay, now we're sitting down. And by the way, this food, somebody made an effort to make it, and we appreciate it's in front of us. Now Let's enjoy it.
Mm.
And this is a Dan Buettner observation. I don't have data for this one, but I really believe you see it in all the blue zones. They live a long time. It's a Dan Buettner suggestion.
Well, we have to wake up to the fact that we're not out here telling people to eat beans just to be cool and be hip like global wellness community. But the stats are not in our favor. 70% of all food in grocery stores is processed. There's a 43% obesity rate in America. How does that correlate to dementia rates?
Yeah. So at the same time that obesity went from 15 to 43% since 1970, the dementia rate for older people has gone from about 10% to about 50%. So if you're 85 years old in America, there's about a 50% chance you're starting to suffer or you're full-blown dementia. And for women, it's worse. It's worse for women than it is for men. And it just shows so clearly that much of dementia is avoidable. We talk about searching for the cure. I hate that. We don't have to get it in the first place. And you know why I know that? You go to Ikaria, island of 10,000 people. We interviewed almost everybody over age 65, and we used the same instrument the National Institutes of Aging uses for cognitive ability. And we found only 3 mild cases of dementia on this entire island of 10,000 people. So that's about a tenth the rate of the United States. It's a genetic melting pot, so they don't have better genes. So here, and they're living a blue zone way, and they're having low dementia. So it tells me pretty clearly 70 to 90% of dementia is completely avoidable.
Yeah, I mean, you said that Americans eat on average 240 pounds of meat a year, but the goal is 1 meat serving a day at least. I mean,
well, I would say the goal is no meat, but if you look at that's a personal, coming from what's good for the environment, what's good for our health, and what's good for animal cruelty. But if you look at blue zones, on average over the last 100 years, they're eating meat about 5 times per month. So 1 serving a week. And that, Walter Willett from Harvard's got a great saying about meat. He says it's a lot like radiation. We know for sure a lot of it will kill you. We don't know what the safe level is.
Wow. I will tell you, though, to balance that, I didn't eat meat for 20 years. And all of a sudden I developed, I would say it was 10 years ago, a severe iron deficiency. Severe. Like I had to have 20 weeks of iron infusions. And then the next year I had to have a super infusion. But guess what? I started eating meat once a week. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And I've never had an issue again.
Yeah.
So we understand that moderation in all things really does make sense in a blue zone way, don't you think?
Well, my problem with moderation is most people don't know for some people, moderation is 1 serving of meat a meal. And and sort of the cynic in me says, well, moderation, everything. Well, we don't want rape in moderation. It's just, I just don't like the term actually, because it gives people an out. And the iron deficiency, I would bet you if you said that you brought a lot more spinach into your diet instead of meat, spinach is also arguably a better source of iron than meat, that you might not have this iron deficiency. So we've just been taught over the years, meat has always been associated with prosperity and health. In the years and the decades we didn't have enough calories to get by, we kind of default to it. It's delicious. We tend to find virtue in the things we find delicious, but there's a lot better sources of iron, in my opinion, than trying to get it out of a steak.
Well, I will tell you that you did give me hope for living on by saying wine in moderation.
Yes. Well, maybe even a little bit more than moderation. So we see, I know there's a lot of research on lately, especially that, alcohol may not be so good for you. I find that you can support almost any argument with the research. But I will tell you one thing. In blue zones, people are living in their mid-90s, staying sharp to the very end, and enjoying a couple glasses of wine a day, or maybe even 3 glasses a day. So, might they eke another year out if they didn't drink wine? Maybe, but heck, my personal opinion, enjoy life, celebrate once in a while.
Especially if your friends are around. Now, let me ask you, what is the grandmother effect? It's a name I love.
Yes, we see it not only in human populations, but also animal populations that keep a grandparent nearby in the immediate pod. So the children that live in a home with a grandparent have lower rates of disease and lower rates of mortality, and in some cases do better in school.
Wow.
And that's what we see in all the blue zones. You very rarely see a family putting their aging parent in a retirement home. That would shame the family. And also, by the way, if you want to see your parents' life expectancy drop between 2 and 6 years, depending on their age, put them in a retirement home.
That's right.
So it's this virtuous circle of keeping your aging parent in the home, harness their wisdom, their knowledge, their resilience, harness their child care benefits of growing garden, of keeping the food traditions of the family alive. Your children will thrive. They'll live longer. And it's this virtuous circle.
You know, it's a recurring theme I keep hearing. There's a Harvard professor that says every stage of your life, you should make sure you're doing something. And in this gray-haired stage, which I see you have one or two, and I used to, but they're not there anymore.
Yeah, it's amazing how that reversed.
But
the beans.
It is the time to share accumulated wisdom, right?
Yeah.
You become a resource to the community. And that's what we hope this podcast is, that people can turn here and go, oh, I never thought of that. So let me ask you, one of the articles on your work that I love is what the happiness countries on earth can teach Americans. I'll just give you a prompt, and I know you know the answer. In Denmark, people are paid to go to college, have free healthcare, get 10 months of paid maternity and paternity leave, and are entitled to a funded retirement. Why should that help them live happy?
Well, we tend to think of happiness as the attainment of more joy or getting more things, but a lot of the lack of happiness are the things that worry us on a day-to-day basis. That's just sort of grind at our psyche. So almost 20% of Americans don't have enough health insurance or no health insurance at all.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens if I get sick?
Yep.
There are millions of older people who have zero or very little retirement savings. So how are they going to live when I get old? A lot of parents wonder, how am I going to put my kid through college? College costs $250,000 a year. So Denmark, yes, they have high taxes, but as a result, though, everybody has free access to education through college. College students actually get paid to go to college. Free health care. They're also healthier, lower BMI. And also when you get old, you have nothing to worry about because your needs are going to be taken care of. So that's an important lesson, I think. If happiness is the goal of a country, we ought to be thinking about basic needs as a human right, not as a trickle down, I hope this happens.
Wow. Okay, Singapore, where we went for the Global Wellness Summit in 2019. You said they offer a very clearly defined path to success. That place looks like Disneyland. I was there and I was like, I'm clean, I'm safe. I don't know what to do. But what do you think about Singapore?
I think it's brilliant. I mean, I actually interviewed Lee Kuan Yew, who is I know he's roundly ridiculed for caning and, you get a ticket if you spit out your gum. But he made his ministers were paid $1.5 million a year and recruited from places like MIT. So they're not... First of all, they're not corrupt. And secondly, they're very data driven. So, and because the government, Lee Kuan Yew didn't have to worry about getting reelected in 4 years, he could make difficult decisions that took years to implement. So they're one of the first places to tax tobacco and put these lurid pictures of rotting mouths on the cover on the package of cigarette packages. Invested very heavily in public transportation. And if you want to drive a car in Singapore, it will cost you about the double of what you originally, the purchase price of the car. So instead of every Singaporean having a car, they have a very great public transportation system. Why am I going into that? It's because people get their physical activity by walking back and forth to work, going to the subway. They go every time they go out to eat or go buy their food, they're walking. So you don't have to rely on this gym industry or yoga or Pilates or all these things that, we sign up for. We hope we do. We actually really don't do it. Here, people get this unconscious movement every day because of the way their city is designed. And that was all because there's actually a very good government in place there.
All right. Now I have I have 1 million more questions, but here's the two I'm going to ask. Number one, the final destination that we need to focus on is Costa Rica. You said beautiful, lush, green Costa Rica. The people who live there report the highest levels of daily pleasure in the world. Why?
Well, their values, I would say, are lined up around family, number one. Number two, they have very easy access to recreation. But I think the most important thing, where, an American, for example, would often forego a social opportunity to, get work done, or, maybe get ahead in their profession. That would almost never happen in Costa Rica. So their value system is going to put more emphasis on family and friends and leisure time. And my exact quote so I wrote the Blue Zones of Happiness. I wrote a cover story for National Geographic. And I found there's a metric called positive affect. So how people are experiencing day to day with the most smiling, least amount of stress and worry. That's specifically in Costa Rica. They produce more happiness per GDP dollar than any place else in the world. So I went to try to figure that out. And part of it, once again, is free healthcare. They don't worry about healthcare. Part of it, too, is they have something called the sun effect. If you live in a sunny country, control for everything else, it's worth about 10% higher levels of happiness. Same thing is true, by the way, if you live near water.
Yep. How about sun and water?
So maybe you get 20, but you can get them both in Costa Rica. But it's a very well-managed country. You look to the north, in Nicaragua, and the south, to Panama, and they're neither happy nor particularly long-lived. So once again, it all goes back to what the environment is. And Costa Rica is happy and long-lived because of very smart decisions, mostly from a president named Figueres, whose son actually just ran again. Very principled, educated, data-driven leaders who favor quality of life over just economic growth.
Wow, that is a mouthful. I love here in Costa Rica that it's so important to have breakfast with a friend, meet for coffee, lunch with friends, happy hour, organize a dinner. It's important for overall happiness. I think, we forget to do it. We think it's too much work. We make a big deal out of it.
But, why be on this earth if you're not enjoying it? And by the way, if you can manage your life to be in the upper quintile of happiness, so if you're the top 20%, I asked this question, if you're on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're 7.5 or higher on a scale of 1 to 10, it's worth about 8 years of life expectancy over being in the least happy. So it's trying to be happy is not only good for your day-to-day enjoyment, but it's also good for being on this planet for longer.
The other thing is, Dan, we at the Global Wellness Conversations podcast always try to focus on hope. And I see on your site that you are working with communities and you're turning them around. Am I wrong? Did I read it wrong?
No, but it's been my business for 12 years. That's my day job, actually.
Hey.
I just do this for fun.
Okay. So tell us what's happening.
So the core insight of Blue Zones, people who live in Blue Zones, they don't live a long time because they have greater discipline or greater sense of individual responsibility, or indeed, they don't try to change their behavior at all. They simply live in environments where the healthy choice is the easy choice. So about 12 years ago, I got funding from AARP at the time to take an entire city, work with city government to change their policies to favor healthy food over junk food and junk food advertising, to favor the pedestrian over the motorist, and to favor the non-smoker over the smoker.
Wow.
And then to go into every restaurant, grocery store, workplace, school, and church and offer them Blue Zone certification to change their designs and their policies to favor moving more, eating better, and then get 15% of the adult population. And you know what? We're now working in 72 American cities, including Fort Worth, Texas, Naples, Florida. The insurance companies pay us for reshaping their environment so that people make better unconscious choice. And we only get paid when we lower the BMI or the obesity rate in the entire city. So it's actually putting this ancient wisdom from places like Sardinia and Okinawa to work in, modern day America. And it's working.
So Dan, what do you think makes people reach out to you? What makes municipalities or cities reach out to?
Responsible leaders, and I think of like Betsy Price, who's the mayor of Fort Worth, Texas. She's all of a sudden been elected, and as Thomas Jefferson said, that the job of a leader is to improve the happiness and health of the people that they're overseeing. So a good politician is not there for his own ego. He or she is there to improve the quality of life. And, America's kind of going to hell. I mean, when it comes to health, our health has been getting worse since the 1970s. Life expectancy has dropped every year of the past 3 years. Our happiness level has dropped, even though inflation-adjusted income has gone up by a factor of 3 since World War II. Our happiness is no better. So it's time to try something new. And our Blue Zone projects offer a bundle of policies and designs that are correlated to happiness and longevity around the world.
All right. Well, you know what? I could talk to you for 2 hours. I would like to invite you back to the show. We're going to talk about reactions from all of the girls in the room cooking your recipes.
Oh, I love
give some feedback.
Only if I get to eat them.
Okay. And then to end, Dan, would you mind sharing those 4 questions that you want people to do for an internal inventory to see if they need to make an adjustment?
So knowing and being able to articulate your sense of purpose is worth about 8 years of life expectancy. So what does that mean? I mean, people sort of, what my passions. So we offer these purpose workshops where we essentially take people through an exercise that has them writing down what your values are in very short phrases, then writing down, what am I good at? What do I like to do? And where's an outlet? Because without putting your purpose to work, it's sort of meaningless. So once you identify what you're good at and what you like to do, some people, fewer than 30% in America, find their purpose at work, but most of us have to find our purpose by some kind of volunteer outlet. And we know worldwide people who volunteer report higher levels of happiness, but they also have lower BMI, lower rate of heart disease, and lower healthcare costs.
Oh my God. So my purpose can't be pickleball, you don't think?
Well, maybe there's an exception. I play a lot of pickleball. So,
all right. Well, listen, I want you back because we're going to talk about your next book, which I'm going to plant a seed for.
Thank you.
How having a pet helps you live longer. Would you mind? Because that's my personal passion.
I'm a big believer in that, actually.
I might get a camel after this trip to the Holy Land. I don't know. Dan, thank you so much. And we'll look forward to talking to you again. Okay?
Oh, I just love it. Thank you very much.